Worship.
Let's just begin in prayer. Loving God, I thank you for how faithful I am. I thank you that I live a practically sinless existence. That my righteous acts are as numerous as stars in the sky. That personally, my great deeds are as vast as the ocean. That my goodness really knows no bounds. I think of all the saints that have gone before me and how much better than them I am. And I just pray that this morning we would come alive to the reality of my greatness, of how lucky we are to be graced in my presence. But most of all, Lord, I thank you that I'm not like these people in front of me this morning. These wretched sinners. And I just pray that you find something redeemable amongst them, something other than me, obviously. And all God's people said, sing on. Yeah, go easy, Jane. Hopefully you'll realise that I'm illustrating a gospel reading this morning, and if you don't realise that, I don't know what that says about me, really. But this is what we come across in today's parable, a Pharisee making a public prayer to God that's not actually really to God. It's a posturing prayer of social religiosity to others, of ecclesial or affirming. And the prayer the Pharisee makes here is one where the primary purpose is to try and distinguish oneself from others. And he starts off well. He says, thank you, God. It's a pretty good place to start. And this is actually the beginning of the formula of a praise psalm. And usually this is followed by identifying the great acts of God. But instead we hear the great acts of the Pharisee, with him impressively using the first person singular pronoun I 5 times in 2 sentences. But not only does the Pharisee separate himself from others using his words, he stands on his own in the temple. So he physically separates himself. The whole situation makes me think of box seats in the theatre. On the rare occasion I'm cultured enough to be in a theatre, I find myself looking up at the box seats from the pleb seats and thinking about how bafflingly impractical they are. Many of them are obstructed and facing practically the wrong direction. But culturally, these seats were about being seen rather than to see, to separate oneself from others. In fact, before box seats became common in the 18th century, the wealthy elite used to sit on the side of the stage, which became a bit distracting. Imagine trying to watch West Side Story at the theatre, but Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are just sitting on the side of the stage, swinging their feet off the edge. But this is similar to what we see the Pharisee doing in this parable. In his eyes, God is not the audience of his prayer. The other people in the temple are. He has taken his box seat in the temple, not to worship, but to separate himself from others. God, I thank you that I am not like other people, he prays in front of those very other people. Yet something funny happens when we read this parable. Most of us will follow the story and subconsciously say to ourselves, well, thank God I'm not like the Pharisee. And then we list in our minds the reasons we're more morally pure than him. Thank God I'm not arrogant like him. Thank God my acts of worship are actually genuine. Thank God I'm not judgmental like him, thus implicating ourselves as being exactly like him. This is a very cleverly constructed parable because it implicates us all in the Pharisees' behaviour. We read the story and assume we are the tax collector, and in doing so we reveal we are probably more like the Pharisee than we would like to think. And if we're honest, we do think the best of ourselves and the worst of others. We so often judge ourselves by our intentions, but others by their actions. And if we're honest, we all have this internal desire to be seen, to be noticed, to stand out and to be significant. And our brains are actually geared towards this. The author William Storr, in his book Selfie, observes that researchers find our reward systems are activated most when we achieve relative rather than absolute rewards. We're designed to feel best not when we get more, but when we get more than those around us. We don't just want to be great, we want to be great in relation to others. We want to be seen and to stand out. We want the approval, the praise, and sometimes the envy of others. And we see that one of Jesus' biggest battles in the Gospels is against religious people who do things just to be seen. How much more exacerbated is this in our Western culture that so values merit and uniqueness and influence? We can all feel this invisible motivator to get ahead than those around us, to earn more, to have more, to be more, to know more, to be contentless. And so what is it that Jesus suggests is the antidote to all of this morning? It's the humble help of humility. Let me tell you about one of the first marital arguments that Zara and I had. The first place that Zara and I lived in, it wasn't great, and by not great I mean it was really awful. But it was good value for money. It was about $190 a week, which was good because at the time I was studying theology, which doesn't pay well, and I was working just 6 hours a week at the local post office, putting mail in the PO box slots, at a time where Zara used to affectionately call me Postman Matt. And there are a number of reasons that the flat we were living in wasn't great. The first reason is that the street we used to live on flooded regularly because of earthquake damage. It was on the edge of the Flockton Basin. So this is Zara going to get milk at the dairy. She didn't get milk in the end because of the water in the way, the flooding. But the other main problem with our place was that it was so damp and mouldy. It was so damp that if you left a piece of paper on the floor and picked it up in the morning, it would be completely soggy. It was disgusting. And so we had a dehumidifier that would need changing 3 times a day. And so this was our first place. And when we first moved in here, we immediately got a cat. This is our cat, Augustine. It's very beautiful. It's kind of like a Tinu Mufasa or something. But anyway, we got him as a kitten and he needed to be litter trained. But there were some occasional accidents, leading to only more damp spots in our house. Which leads me to the argument. On this day of the argument, we came home from work and discovered that the bed was damp. I was arguing that the bed was damp because I believed that our kitten had urinated on it. Zara was arguing that the bed was damp because our house is always damp. And this went back and forth for a wee while until I got fed up. And I said, if you're so sure that the cat has not urinated on this bed, then why don't you lick the bed sheet? Something I admire about Zara is the way she absolutely backs herself. And so she confidently took the bed sheet and, as if she were licking an ice cream, applied her tongue to the sheet and licked it from top to bottom. Unfortunately for Zara, it became clear that I, in fact, was correct, of which the consequences were not ideal for her or her oral hygiene. And it would be fair to assume that both Zara and I in this situation were lacking humility. Zara's lack of humility driven by her momentary inability to appreciate my perspective. And my lack of humility led to a serious amount of antagonism that led to me technically winning the argument, but creating a situation where it's really hard to say there was any winner at all. unless having a wife with cat pee breath is something to be bragged about. But humans are often resistant to humility. We so often hear this phrase about having to eat humble pie. This phrase is usually associated with the shame of being humble, the humiliation of humility. But why would eating humble pie be a bad thing? Not least because pie is delicious. The theologians C.S. Lewis and Tim Keller reckoned we have humility all wrong. Timothy Keller noted that there's nothing more relaxing than humility. And C.S. Lewis noted that to get even near humility for a moment is like a drink of cold water to a man in the desert. Why is this? Because at the heart of humility is giving up on the exhausting pursuit of pretending something we are not. Humility is simply embracing the reality of who we are, people who are loved but limited, beloved but broken, people who are in need of God's mercy. This is the reality of every single human being. Being humble, showing humility, acknowledging our limitations isn't burdensome, it's a gift. It's a gift because real humility is seeing ourselves rightly in relationship to God and the world. And we see with the tax collector who simply prays, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. This relief to settle into this humble way of being human. To not have to maintain a version of ourselves which is divorced from reality. And Henry Nouwen calls this way of living arrogance. He said, isn't arrogance putting yourself on a pedestal to avoid being seen as you see yourself? Isn't arrogance just another way of dealing with the feelings of worthlessness? Beneath our arrogance, there lives much self-doubt, just as there is a great amount of pride and even self-rejection. Whether I am inflated or deflated, I lose touch with the truth and distort my vision of reality. So to be humble is to have our vision of ourselves rightly aligned with God's. To give up on living life as we wished others saw us, and instead living as God does see us. To stop being afraid of who we actually are. To be satisfied with being seen by God. To stop living in the box seat. Humility, as the saying goes, isn't thinking less of ourselves, it's thinking of ourselves less. And we are all invited this morning to give up on our proud and insecure projects of self-projection and to simply be both broken and loved. But humility doesn't just have to transform our inner lives. I believe it could also change our society as well. Desmond Tutu was a bishop and theologian and chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, where he took on a huge project of racial reconciliation and restorative justice in South Africa. And Tutu has written extensively on the topic of forgiveness, but he actually claims that it's humility that is foundational in how forgiveness works. He wrote, ultimately, it is humble awareness of our own humanity that allows us to forgive. We are, every one of us, so very flawed and so very fragile. I know that were I born a member of the white ruling class at that time in South Africa's past, I might easily have treated someone with the same dismissive disdain with which I was treated. I know, given the same pressures and circumstances, I am capable of the same monstrous acts as any other human on this achingly beautiful planet. It is this knowledge of my own frailty that helps me find my compassion, my empathy, my similarity, and my forgiveness for the frailty and cruelty of others. I think this is an incredibly compassionate and humble statement to make, not least by someone who has lived through such a hateful time. And I think this is a way of thinking about people that the world is in desperate need of. Our world today feels exhaustingly polarized and angry and antagonistic and contemptuous. And it feels that algorithms and echo chambers have eroded our ability to humanize each other. Perhaps we're so angry and frustrated with others all the time because we can't identify ourselves in the other anymore. What Tutu was getting at was that if we're ever going to break the cycle of aggression and revenge, we must humble ourselves and acknowledge that given the same circumstances as someone else, we could be on the other side. We could be on the other side of the poverty line, the other side of the prison bars, the other side of the political divide, the other side of faith, the other side of power. This is the kind of humble humanizing that I think the world so desperately needs at the moment. And I think both our hearts and the world are aching for humility. So may you go this morning resting in the mercy that frees you from pretending to be more than you are. May you go this morning seeing yourself and others through the gentle eyes of humility. And may you go this morning content to be seen by God and to walk in grace besides one another. Amen.